Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're not just scratching the surface. We're taking a jackhammer to the very foundation.
hmm
We're tackling a question that feels like it should be the simplest thing in the world to answer, but if you actually stop and poke at it, really poke at it, the
Right.
whole thing might just, unravel.
It's one of those things that seems totally solid until you look too closely,
Mm,
like a magic eye poster or something.
exactly. The question is right always right? And is wrong always wrong?
Or does the very definition of a crime or a sin or an injustice, does it change depending on the calendar year and, I guess, where you happen to be standing on a map?
That is the ultimate philosophical question. We want to think of justice as this solid, unmoving rock.
We want it to be granite.
Mm.
But the source material we're looking at today, it argues that justice is actually more like sand.
Sam.
Yeah, it shifts. It changes shape depending on the wind, the time, and the people standing on it.
So the text we're diving into is titled The Evolution of Subjective Morality. And honestly, this thing is a heavy hitter.
It really is.
It challenges the idea that our moral compass is fixed. Instead, it argues that what we consider justice or injustice is entirely dependent on human realization and context.
And that's a scary thought for a lot of people. I mean, we crave stability. We want to know that the rules are the rules.
Sure.
But the mission of this deep dive is to unpack that argument, the one that says morality is a subjective, evolving process.
Mm.
We're going to look at everything from historical slavery to the shifting definitions of age and consent.
And we're even getting into some really heady logical paradoxes about divinity and objective truth.
Yeah.
So buckle up. We're going to look at how historical atrocities were once seen as totally normal and why trying to apply ancient rules to modern society might actually be, well, impossible.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the source starts with a concept that hits hard right out of the gate. It says that an act being unjust is merely a concept.
Right. It's not a law of physics like gravity.
Exactly. Gravity doesn't care what year it is.
Right. You drop a stone in 2000 BC, it falls. You drop it today, it falls. But wrongness,
That's not consistent.
no. That's software, not hardware.
Yeah.
The source uses the example of slavery to kind of set the stage here. And this is crucial for the whole argument.
Yeah, let's go there. The text points out that there was a time in human history, a very, very long time actually, where keeping slaves or maidservants was not considered an injustice.
It was just how the world worked. It was part of the economy.
And what's fascinating here is the distinction the source makes about the people of that time. The argument isn't just that slavery happened, we all know that.
Right.
It's about the consciousness of the people involved. The text explains that humanity eventually reached a realization that one human cannot be made the property of another.
A realization. I love that word choice.
Me too. It implies the knowledge wasn't always there. It had to be discovered, like discovering fire or something.
Exactly. A gradual expansion of consciousness. And the source points out that before society established that slavery was bad, the act of buying or selling slaves wasn't socially categorized as wrong by the people living then.
It was neutral.
It was like buying a house or hiring a gardener today.
So if I'm getting this right, the source is saying you can't just look back and say, those were evil people doing evil things.
No, you can't.
You have to look at it and say, those were people living in a reality where that specific moral circuit just hadn't been connected yet.
That is the core of the whole subjective morality argument.
Hmm.
If you went back in time and asked someone, do you feel guilty for owning this person?
Yeah.
They might genuinely look at you with total confusion.
Because the concept of guilt wasn't there for that act.
Precisely. The societal context, the subjective reality they lived in, didn't label it as unjust. The guilt mechanism for that specific act doesn't exist yet.
And that leads to the source's first major takeaway. The acceptance of justice or injustice is entirely subjective. It relies on the era, the location, the people.
It's not written in the stars. It's written in our minds. And as our minds change, the writing changes.
Which brings us to the next topic, and this one is perhaps even more sensitive.
The evolution of age and consent.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a little uncomfortable. But we have to look at what the text says. It moves from slavery to the concept of marriage and age.
And the source notes that in the past, the concept of pedophilia, at least as we understand it today, it just did not exist.
Which sounds absolutely wild to modern ears. You hear that and you immediately recoil.
We do. But the text explains the metric they used back then. It wasn't a number. It wasn't "Are you 18?"
So what was it?
The metric was physical appearance and, I guess, maturity. If a girl looked grown, if she appeared physically mature, she was considered ready to be a wife and enter a physical relationship.
And crucially, society didn't view this as unjust. It wasn't a secret.
No, it was the standard operating procedure. It was celebrated with weddings and feasts.
But then the source draws this incredibly sharp contrast with the modern era, and it brings up a very specific, very modern reference.
The Epstein files.
Right, the Epstein files. The source mentions that in that context, the abuse of 14-year-olds is highlighted, and it makes this logical leap. It implies that if 14 is the headline, it likely means those aged 15, 16, or 17 were also abused.
And the point the source is making is about the lens of wrongness.
Hmm?
In the modern era, physical relations with a minor are counted individually as specific wrongs or crimes. We've drawn a hard line.
Under this age, it's a crime, period.
Exactly.
So here's the conflict the source presents. You have the same physical act. In the ancient context, it's marriage, it's normal.
Yeah.
In the modern context, like the Epstein case, it's a horrific crime. Why the disparity?
And the source has a very specific explanation for the why. It argues that the difference lies in knowledge. In the modern age, the Epstein era, if you will, people know that underage relations are wrong. It's established law, it's established morality, and yet they do it anyway.
Ah, I see. So the modern criminal is breaking a known moral code. They're violating the consciousness of their time.
They're looking at the stop sign and driving right through it.
Whereas the source argues that the past age, they lacked the moral consciousness that the act was wrong in the first place.
You can't knowingly violate a rule that hasn't been written yet. It just reinforces that central thesis. Morality evolves. It's not static.
It really challenges you to step outside of your own timeline, doesn't it?
It does. We take our current rules for granted, assuming they've always been obvious. But this text is saying, no, nothing is obvious until we collectively decide it is.
Which leads us to the biggest hurdle for this whole theory. If morality is just human opinion shifting over time,
Then what happens to the idea of objective morality?
and what happens when we bring God into the picture?
Oh boy, this is the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, the source dives into what I would call a theological logic puzzle. Reading through this, I felt like my brain was doing gymnastics.
It really is a logic puzzle. The text challenges the very idea that objective morality even exists. It calls it arguably just an assumption, and it uses a classic dilemma to prove its point.
Okay, so let's walk through the logic provided in the text. It refers specifically to God using the term Allah in the source, and it sets up this dilemma.
Right, so let's look at scenario A. Let's assume there is a distinct, unchangeable, objective morality out there in the universe. A list of rules that's true forever.
Okay, I'm picturing a cosmic rule book. It's glowing on a pedestal somewhere.
If that exists, the source argues, then God must follow it. If God does something outside of that objective morality, it would have to be called wrong.
Whoa. Okay, so the implication there is, if there's a rule book higher than God, then God isn't the highest authority.
Exactly. It implies God is subject to a higher standard. He isn't the creator of good, he's just a follower of good.
Okay, that's a huge problem for theology. That breaks the definition of an all-powerful God. So what's scenario B?
Scenario B is that we assume whatever God does is the definition of objective morality.
God is the rules.
God is the rules.
Yeah.
But the source sees a big problem there too. It argues that if morality is just whatever God does, then morality becomes subjective to God's will.
It changes based on what he decides.
If he decides X is good today, it's good. If he decides Y is good tomorrow, then Y is good. So it's still subjective. It's just subjective to God instead of humans. It's arbitrary.
Precisely. The point this source is driving at is that true objectivity in morality is logically impossible in either scenario.
Either God is subservient to the rules, or the rules are subject to God's whim. Neither one gives you a fixed, independent, objective morality.
There is a fascinating way to break it down. It kind of strips away the safety net of saying, well, it's wrong because it's objectively wrong.
Right. The source is saying, no, it's wrong because we or God decided it is right now.
And this creates this massive tension in how we view history, our ancestors.
Yes, the source calls out this specific societal cognitive dissonance.
The have it both ways problem. I love this part of the argument because I think we're all guilty of it.
Oh, absolutely. On side A, the text says we want to be lenient with the past. We say, it's unfair to judge our ancestors by modern lenses.
Right. Don't call them criminals for owning slaves. It was normal then. We want to give them a pass.
But then here's side B. At the exact same time, we want to claim that the rules considered right in that ancient era must still be considered right today.
And what was wrong then must still be wrong now.
We want the authority of the past without the baggage of the past.
We want ancient morality to be eternal, but we don't want to judge the ancient people for the parts we now find horrible.
Exactly. You cannot hold both positions. It's a contradiction. And the source uses some extremely graphic, harsh examples to illustrate why side B keeping ancient rules alive is impossible.
Yeah, these examples are rough, but we have to discuss them. The source mentions stoning.
Yes. There was an era where burying people in the ground and stoning them to death was a socially supported act. It was justice.
And the question the source poses is, can we support that today?
And the answer is a resounding no. If you tried to do that today, you wouldn't be upholding justice, you'd be a monster.
You'll get arrested.
The second example is even more specific. The source describes a historical norm regarding defeated tribes in war. The process involved finding a tribe guilty and then specifically checking the male members for pubic hair.
And this is the part that really illustrates the difference in eras. It sounds so arcane and cruel.
It is. The source states that those with hair, indicating they were men, not boys, were genocided. They were killed, while the women and children were taken and enslaved.
And again, the source emphasizes, this was once socially supported. This was the rules of war at that time.
And the realization here is stark. We strictly cannot accept these ancient rights in the modern world. You can't say, well, it was right then, so it's valid now.
No modern moral framework would accept it. It would be a crime against humanity.
So we are forced to admit that the definition of right has fundamentally changed. We can't just copy-paste the past into the present.
Which brings us to the conclusion, the path forward that the source lays out.
It argues that humans must reach a necessary realization. Religious and moral matters are subjective.
It's a call to stop following blindly.
Right. The text argues we have to accept the evolution of human understanding. What was wrong then might not be wrong now, and vice versa. It's a two-way street. Morality breathes.
And it posits that a better society is only possible if we accept this evolution. If we dig our heels in, we're stuck.
The final warning in the text is really powerful. It says if we insist on objective morality, if we claim ancient rules are eternal, we trap ourselves, we paint ourselves into a logical corner.
How so? Walk us through that trap one more time.
Well, think about it. If the rules are eternal, we have two choices. Choice one, we judge our ancestors by today's standards. And since they did things we now consider evil, we'd have to label our entire lineage as sinners or criminals.
Which feels wrong because they were just living their lives. It feels unfair.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then there's choice two. To validate our ancestors, we'd have to validate their atrocities in the modern world. We'd have to say slavery and stoning were right then, and since morality is objective, they must still be right now.
And that's a nightmare scenario. That legitimizes horror in the modern world.
It is. The source is saying the only way out of this trap is to admit that morality is subjective. We can say it was right for them, but it is wrong for us. And that's okay.
That's evolution.
Yes. It's a profound shift in perspective. It moves us from a world of black and white judgment to a world of context and growth. It allows us to forgive the past without repeating it.
It does require a lot more thinking, though. It's easier to just follow a list of rules than to constantly evaluate the context of our actions.
It requires active participation in morality. But the source argues that effort is necessary.
So what does this all mean for us? We've gone from slavery to consent through these logical paradoxes and landed on this idea of necessary evolution.
The big takeaway is that we should be less quick to judge the past, but also less quick to cling to it. Just because something has always been done that way doesn't mean it belongs in the future.
It puts the responsibility squarely on our shoulders. We can't blame the stars or our ancestors.
No, we have to decide what is right now. And that's both terrifying and empowering. It means we have to pay attention.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with a final thought, something that kind of haunted me while reading this.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If morality is truly subjective and evolves with our collective consciousness, if we are currently standing on those shifting sands you mentioned.
What are we doing now that people will be horrified by in the future?
Exactly. What practice do we consider completely normal and moral today that our great-grandchildren will look back on with horror? What will be the slavery or the stoning of the 21st century?
That is the question that keeps you up at night. Is it how we treat animals, the planet, our economic systems? If this source is right, there's almost certainly an answer. We just can't see it yet.
We're still waiting for that realization, something to mull over. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's been a heavy one, but an important one.
Always a pleasure. Keep questioning the context.
See you next time.